Cool, so thanks so much everyone for joining me this morning. Today we've got the Asana Clinic, and I don't know if you've seen any of the replays before, but basically Asana Clinic is just kind of 30 minutes, 45 minutes long, where we break down a couple of the poses just to give you guys a better understanding of how to adapt them, what the target areas should be, where we should be working to get a better alignment for us. So it's not really like the format of a kind of full class, it's more of a quick sort of how-to. So I hope that sounds okay. And then posture-wise, I was thinking that we would cover Chaturanga, chair pose, our utkatasana, Malasana, which is our yogi squat, and a 3-leg down dog. So I hope all of that sounds good to you guys. But if there's anything else that we haven't covered that you wanted to see here, let me know. And if we've got time, I'll stick it in, or I'll put it into the next month's Asana Clinic. And I'd really like to hear your guys' feedback as well. So if I'm showing a pose and you're like, oh, I have a question about this, please do unmute yourself and ask me. Like, don't wait for me to ask you guys questions. Like, do interrupt me. So let's get started then. I hope everyone's in a nice warm room and feeling good, but we'll just do a very quick warm-up, just so we're not going from 0 to 30. We're not going all the way to 100 today. So starting by standing up, let's just do a few star jumps. Taking the arms out to the side, taking the legs out. We've got the heating on here, so I'm already boiling, which is lovely. It's like hot yoga this morning. Okay, jumping with the knees up. And then kicking the feet back. And then forward and up. And then kicking back. And then starting up by standing, take the hands behind the head, opening up through the chest, squeeze the glutes, tailbone long. And then exhale, start to round the elbows in, round from the head, soften through the knees, folding all the way down. Take hold of opposite elbow, take a ragdoll, come side to side. Relax the hands down, gently nod the head yes. Gently shake the head no. And then take the hands behind the head, soften through the knees, slowly peeling all the way up, vertebrae by vertebrae, until the head is the last thing to lift, coming all the way up. Good job. Okay, we're going to do one sun salutation. I'm going to verbally talk you through it, but I want to see you guys, see what your practice looks like this morning. So standing to the top of your mat. Good, I can see most of you. Take an inhale, hands up, look up. Exhale, folding forwards all the way down to uttanasana. Bend the knees as much as you need to, lovely. Inhale, lengthen through the spine. And exhale, chaturanga. Good, inhale, forwards and up, upward facing dog. And exhale, downward facing dog. Good, just pedal through the feet, take a moment there. And then whenever you're ready, coming forward to the top of your mat to lengthen through the spine. Sorry, stepping the feet forward, top of the mat. Lengthening and exhale, fold. Inhale, coming all the way up to stand. Lift the arms up towards the sky, gaze up to the thumbs. And exhale, Samasthiti, standing at the top of your mat. Good, lovely sun salutations. Okay, so let's get started then with our chair pose. So you will have seen this one from our Surya Namaskar B or our B sun salutation. We have the feet either together or hip distance, depending on what variation you're doing. The hands can be together or they can be apart, depending on what your shoulders feel like. But we want to be thinking about sitting the hips low, bringing the arms forward. The chest is high here. So again, the feet can be together, the hands can be together, or taking them apart. But we want to think about not dropping the belly down here. Also not having the knees really far forwards. We want the weight back into the heels, sitting the hips low as we can, and lifting the chest up. So I think you guys are really going to enjoy practicing this one today. So let's see if you can get like a side profile for me wherever you are. Take a deep inhale, sweep the arms forward and up, sit the hips nice and low, finding your chair pose. Good, just notice where the weight is lying in the feet, bring it back into the heels if it's not already. Maybe you can even lift the toes up off the floor. Keep breathing, start to feel those thighs start to burn up, sit the hips even lower if you can. Good, arms in line with the rest of the spine so you get this really lovely kind of lightning bolt shape. Beautiful poses, hold it there. 2, see if you can go a bit lower, Rebecca. 1, oh there we go, loads lower. And release. Give your legs a shake. So take a moment and notice if you did that with the feet together or the feet apart, because I did say you could do either. So I want you to try that one again, but with the different variation to what you just did. Okay, so find your pose, feet together or apart. Take an inhale, reach the arms forward, sit the hips nice and low. Take the weight back into the heels. See if you can tuck the tailbone a little bit, Natalie. Instead of back bending, tuck the tailbone a little. Good. Take a breath. 1 more. Sit the hips even lower, even lower, even lower. And release. Good. So what I was saying about the tailbone, if I show you side on, it's tempting to kind of really kick the tailbone out here. So you see I'm kind of getting my belly towards my thighs here, and I'm here. But if I can scoop the belly in a bit, tuck the tailbone down, then I'm engaging my core as well, and I have a stronger pose there. Okay, so here, instead of kicking the tailbone back, it's actually like really hard to make that movement. But try to kind of notice the difference with that. So I want you to do 1 more pose, and I want you to really kick the tailbone out before you go into it, and then sit the hips down, and notice the difference between kind of keeping this nice and strong. Imagine drawing all of this in, and then sitting down from there. Okay, so I won't make you hold it super long. I just want you to notice the difference there. So standing up nice and tall, kick your tailbone back, come into a back bend at the bottom, and then sit down. Over-exaggerate that movement, just observing how that feels. Yep. Okay, and then take a break, stand up. Now this time, think about really drawing in all of this, engaging the core, tailbone kind of lengthening down, and now I want you to sit down and find your pose again. Okay. And take a break. So feel free to unmute yourselves. I would love to know, did you find it felt a bit different? Did you learn anything about your chair pose today? Let me know, guys. Oh, good. Yeah, and I think naturally you do want to sort of kick your tailbone out because you're sort of moving your hips back. It sort of makes sense to want to go that way. So it's kind of working your body in the opposite way to how it naturally feels it wants to go. In the same way as kind of when we do a warrior one, when we step that leg back, see how my tailbone is tilted, and I'm kind of like leaning forwards over my leg a little bit. But when I bend this leg, tuck the tailbone under, straighten that leg back, then I've got so much more engagement here, so much more strength into the core. So we talked about Warrior One last week, guys. So last month. So if you didn't get that one, it's on YouTube today. But yeah, it's that differentiation between the tilting of the pelvis and coming back. And I hope that when you kind of came in this way, you start to feel all of this get much stronger as well. How did you guys feel on the thighs? It's a bit of a burner, that one, isn't it? Yeah. Saying good morning to your legs. Oh, good. Well, I'm glad you guys liked that one. So quite a quick one. We'll move on to the next one because I want to try and keep this about half an hour, 45 minutes max. But we'll work into our 3-legged dog next. So we did downward dog last month, so if you missed that one, you can have a look. But just to remind you guys, in our downward dog, we're going to come into a plank shape, feet hip distance, hands shoulder width, and then we're going to lift the hips up. Just have a look first, then we'll work together. Now from this position, I want you to choose your favourite leg and lift up towards the sky, but I want you to keep the hips level. So it might mean that you don't get to lift the leg up a bit. As you lift the leg up, it's tempting to shift the body forwards like I'm doing here, but I want you to keep the body pressing back as you keep the leg lifting. Now tempting as you lift up, see what's happening to my hips. I want to square off the hips. And when I say square, what I mean is that the hips are in one line here instead of, one on top of the other this way. So we come up. I want you to lift that leg so that it's square, keeping the belly pressing towards the thigh. Lift it up. Once you get to the position that you're happy with, I want you to do a slight internal rotation of this top leg and then pulse it for 10. Okay? And then we're going to work into the feeling of stacking the leg on top, stacking the hip. So I like to bend the knee and then think about opening up this hip. So we press back, we look underneath that armpit. It doesn't have to be this high at all, it can be much lower. You can bend this leg, make it work for you. Okay, so find your downward dog. By the way, if you have questions, just unmute yourself, you guys know. Good, find your downward dog, get the nice distance between the hands and the feet. From your plank, and then lift the hips up and back. Good, choose your favourite leg. Lift it up. Nice, square off the hips. And then start to pulse. Good. And then whenever you've done your 10, I want you to bend the knee, stack one hip on top of the other. And start to really open up through that hip. So lift it up and over. And make sure you're not taking the belly away from the thigh. Keep pushing through the arms. Yeah, see if you can really lift up even more. Lift that hip. As if you're trying to step that foot up and over. Yes, Em, looks good. Looking good, guys. And slowly release, take a break. Before we come back to the center, before we do the other side, just come back to the center and unmute yourself if you've got any questions about that, or if you didn't really feel the difference yet and you wanted to ask me about it. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So when we're coming into that twist, I'm just trying to think of the best view to show you from. Oh, maybe this one might be better, because you'll probably be able to see my hips a bit more. So when I lift this leg up, my hips should hopefully still be roughly square there compared to when I open it up here. Now, as I do that, my bottom leg wants to turn in a bit as well, like this, because eventually we can twist all the way and turn those toes and come into our wild thing, right? So it depends how far you go, because there's going to be a point where you start to come here, and then that's your limit, okay? So then this leg's going to want to turn around so that that one can keep going. So if we're just working into opening up the hips and stacking one on top of the other, then we want to keep that foot stable. Like for me personally, I don't mind if it comes in a little bit, because you're still getting that spinal twist, and you can only go as far as you can go. So it's like with the hips and the shoulders twist, like whether I'm here or whether I'm here, I'm still in the same amount of twist, really. I'm just kind of moving my body slightly over. So I don't think you'll do yourself any harm by allowing that foot to come in a bit, but just know where that twist is coming from. So bringing that leg in more isn't necessarily going to allow you to go deeper into that twist. So it might be better to kind of keep it square and just keep working on that top leg. But I think it's probably okay, really. No worries. Did everyone else kind of feel that difference? Was it helpful to see it from that angle as well with the hips? Hopefully. Yeah, okay, so let's do the other side then. So find your downward dog. Remember which leg you lifted up last time. Lift up the opposite leg this time. And try keep those hips nice and square. And remember, just because you lift the leg doesn't mean that the body can start creeping forwards. And do your 10 pulses with that leg lifting up. Remember in your downward dog, if you want to bend the knee, that's okay. If your heel isn't touching the floor, that's totally fine. Okay. Whenever you've done your 10, I want you to start now feeling the difference. Bend the knee, stack one hip on top of the other. Don't let the body creep forward. See if you can lengthen the tailbone up and back even more. Yes, imagine I'm grabbing hold of your top hip and pulling it up. And gently release the pose, coming all the way down. Okay, so take a moment there. If you have any questions, please do unmute yourselves. It might feel a bit different one side to the other as well, so that's okay. I mean, you can kind of get cramp anywhere. I've personally not had it, but it doesn't mean that it's not normal. But also we have kind of like just woken up, some of us, I definitely have, and starting to move into our body, and we're just getting into positions, holding it there. So yeah, if you get cramp, just come out of the pose, just give yourself a little stretch to lengthen it out if you want to, and hopefully the cramp will like disappear after you've practiced. But if it's something that is staying for a long time afterwards, then maybe you might want to look into that a bit more. Oh, is it? Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe like sometimes when our bodies are concentrating on doing something, our standing leg, that's the part that's anchoring us down, that's our stability. So maybe it's kind of overworking there and getting a bit crampy. Does anyone else experience that? Just interested. Yeah, there you go. Rebecca's waving at you. You're not alone. Okay, so we'll just, before we move on from that pose, there was two things I wanted to tell you. And one of them I've already forgotten. But I think it's helpful to work into that turning around into the wild thing, because that kind of allows you to think about lifting the hip up. That's what I was going to say. I want you to imagine when you're in that pose, so let's just pretend I'm in downward dog, because I definitely can't balance on just one hand. But when you lift that leg up, I want you to imagine I've got my hand on your hip here, and I'm lifting it up and open and pulling it out. So I want you to imagine that you have that physical adjustment, even though I'm not there, to see if you can really lengthen and open to stack the hips on top of the other. So then from there, so we're going to lift up, do that, just imagine my hand is there, opening out into your pose. And then once you get to here, then I want you to start turning around that bottom leg. So when Natalie was saying that her leg feels like it needs to internally rotate, I want you to really do that and step so that eventually you step that foot up and over and you come into your wild thing. Now it doesn't need to be super high. Your leg can literally be here and you can turn it around and find your pose here. Just work it into however is good for you. And we're going to do both sides. Okay, so find your downward dog. Lifting one leg up, bending the knee. Pretend I've got my hand on your hip and I'm lifting it up and over. Good. And then stepping the leg up and all the way over. Find your way into your wild thing. Nice. So that the leg that was in downward dog is straight. Beautiful. Okay, come back into the center. Find your way into downward dog again. Are you okay, Philippine? Lifting the other leg up, find your downward dog. Three-legged dog, bend the knee. Again, imagine I've got my hand on your hip and I'm really lifting and opening up. I feel like I'm seeing so much difference in these already, guys. Okay, whenever you're ready, start to internally rotate that bottom leg. Step that foot up and over. Lift the hips up high, straightening through the leg that was in downward dog, bending through the other leg. Lifting, lengthening, really reach and stretch that arm, and gently release, come back into the center. Yay! How do you guys find that one? Is it starting to feel a bit different? You're feeling a bit more conscious about where everything is going? Ah, yay! Yeah. Oh, that's so good to hear. Oh, well done. Yeah. Nice. It's a shame that I can't always see you guys and actually give you that hands-on adjustment so that you can feel into the pose as to where the body can go and guide it into that position, which I think is sometimes really helpful. But I know most of you guys do my classes. Philippine hasn't done very many, but usually when I'm teaching, I try to give verbal guidance so that it feels like an adjustment even though I'm not there. And I think that can really make a difference. So yeah, well done. Thanks for working into that one. So next we're going to work into Malasana. I'm going to do quickly. So Malasana is our yogi squat. So this is one where I teach this, and when it's a one-way video, I'm thinking, I bet there's so many people at home that are really struggling and hating this pose. But I think it's such a good one that I do really believe it's worth working into. So if it's not comfortable yet, don't worry, because it can be. And I used to hate this one, and now it's one of my favorites. So in our yogi squat, eventually, we're thinking about having the feet flat to the floor, but sometimes it might feel like you want to be up on your tiptoes, so we'll talk about that. We're thinking about having the hands to press. I'm using my elbows to push the knees out towards the side. My tailbone is down, the crown of my head is up towards the ceiling, so I'll show you side on. So I'm trying to keep a nice long spine here. Now it's tempting that people roll on to the inside of their foot. So see, I've lifted up this outer edge. So by pressing down that edge, I'm squeezing my glutes, and then I can start to open up into this space. So that's obviously not going to work for everyone, so I'm going to show you a few ways to prop it out. I'm going to use a rolled up towel. You can use a blanket as well. And you can take that behind the knees to sit down. So you've got that support behind the knees there. You could also take two blocks and take them underneath your heels. If you are somebody that feels like you need to go on your tiptoes, you could also have the towel there as well to help you into that one. Or you can use the block as a stool and open up into your pose from here. So, how do you guys find this Malasana squat before we get started? Is this a pose that you like or you avoid? What do you guys think to this one? What do you say, you avoid it? Oh, you do? Yeah. Oh, cool. So everyone... Yay! Natalie, was it you who told me that you used to hate it and now you like it, or am I thinking of someone else? Ah. Yeah. I think it's such a beautiful pose, and once you find that, you're not fighting yourself to sit into it, then I think, like you say, you can get a lot of stillness in it. It's a really lovely one for kind of opening up into the root chakra as well. I love this pose. I find it very grounding. And that's why I try and think not everyone can do it, but everyone should really feel how lovely this is. So how can we change it so everyone can do it? So yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so find a version of Malasana that you like, and I would recommend trying with the props if you're not comfortable in there. Just have a go at a couple of different ways of doing it. Lovely. And yeah, if you want to give yourself a bit of a wiggle side to side as well as you're kind of easing into it, and just go ahead and do that. Think about really plugging down the outer edges of the feet when you do find that stillness. Think about squeezing the glutes, using the elbows to help bring your knees out towards the side. And we're thinking about chin towards the chest so that we can have a nice long line from the bottom of the spine all the way to the crown of the head. Yes, Emma. Okay, just have a few breaths there. And then if you feel comfortable, you feel stable, I want you to take the arms away and reach the arms forwards and come into a bit of like a forward fold variation. So see if you can drop the hands all the way down to the floor and then just let the head relax. So we're sort of rounding the spine a bit. Try not to let the knees drop in. Just take a nice deep inhale through the nose and exhale through the mouth. And then whenever you're ready, gently releasing. So how did you find that Malasana? I can't see all of Philippine, but I can see almost all of everyone else. I don't think anyone used any props on that one. It's so hard to get like your full body in a shot. I can definitely relate to that. Yeah, what did you guys think to that pose? Big thumbs up from Natalie. Good. And did it feel different, like noticing the foot placement and where the weight's at? Did that make a difference for you, or is that something that you intuitively do anyway? Yeah, I do love that variation because it kind of feels like a surrender for the upper body, but also then the lower body, the glutes have to work twice as hard to keep those knees open when we're working actively into that pose instead of just using our arms to support them out. I feel like everyone's anatomy is kind of different. So, for example, our femur bone, this bone here, when everyone bends their knee, like for me, my knee is kind of a little bit below my shoulder, but some people's will be much lower, or some people's will be more in line with. So if I tell people, like, take your feet to a certain distance, it's going to depend on the length of this. It's going to also depend on the opening that they have in their hips, the tightness in the glute. It's also going to depend on the kind of shape of this connection of the ball and socket joint. So I tend not to give a specific cue there, but I think kind of having them a little bit wider than hip distance. So I usually say take them about as wide as the mat and sit down. And I kind of like my legs to be sort of in this shape where my knees are a little bit over the ankles. Because if they're out a little bit further, try and make that a bit wider, I can't sit as low. I'm getting a real pinching in my hips there. And this just isn't a comfortable position for me at all. So I bring them here, I feel really happy. But equally, if I bring them a bit too close, then I'm working deep into that ankle flexion. I'm kind of folding forwards more. I don't feel as comfortable or as happy here. So I think just intuitively working with your body, finding that shape where you're more comfortable to sit down, and your body will kind of guide you there. So I don't like to give too specific guidance. For me, my ankles are a little bit wider than my hips, but for you, you might prefer yours a bit closer, or you might prefer them a bit further away. But that is a really good point, because I think if you do get that distance wrong in your body, it makes the pose feel completely differently. So actually, I want everyone to explore that for yourself. So go back to your mat. I want you to think about where you usually take the feet and take them a little bit wider now. And then sit the hips down and find that pose. So for me, this is much harder. But for you, you might be like, oh, actually, this is way easier for me. Okay, take a break. Now draw the feet in closer than you usually would. and sit the hips down. And I always think it can be useful to actually like investigate with our practice and just observe how it feels for us. So I can see Emma is folded much further forward in this variation than she has been in the others. And Philippine's looking a bit scrunched up there. Okay, take a break. So yeah, unmute yourselves if you want to. Tell me how you found that variation in the differences of the feet. Yeah. Yeah. But that's it, when you have the feet a bit wider, it can put that pressure more into different parts of the body, because as well, your body's like, oh, I don't like this, I'm going to try and hold myself out of it. So getting that feet placement is a really good point. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. But that's it, exploring and finding a version that works for you. So in some styles of yoga, it will be, the feet need to be hip distance exactly. The feet need to be flexed all the time and the knees pointing to the ceiling. But everyone's anatomy is so different that even if we might look like we're doing the same pose, it might feel completely differently. So even if, me and Natalie might have the exact same foot placement, we might have the knees out to the side, she might be feeling it really in the knees, I might be feeling it really into the hips, and we might both need to adapt to make it work for our bodies. So I don't like to give a specific alignment cue in that respect, but I do think it's always important with all the poses really to say, well, how does it feel if I do take the feet a bit wider? How is it if I bring them in a bit? How is it if I rotate the feet in or rotate them out? And does that work better? So we think about the target area of the poses and always just come back to that. Am I getting what I should be getting out of this pose? Am I feeling it where I should be feeling it? Because we kind of have that sweet pain of yoga where we're in our Malasana, we're feeling this nice opening up into the hips, maybe I'm feeling it into here, maybe I'm feeling it into here, I'm getting this nice lengthening pose, but I'm not feeling any pain in my knees or my ankles, and I don't want to be feeling any pain there because that's not a target area for this pose. Actually in none of the poses do we want to be feeling pain into our joints. So always just adapt them in a way that is kind for your body. I talk really quickly, don't I? I'll take a breath. If anyone wants to add anything to that or offer anything, then please do, because there's honestly no silly questions, and I'm really interested to hear what you guys think about these as well. Okay, so the next pose then, and the last one, is our Chaturanga. So, Chaturanga, just to remind you guys, if you're not familiar with the names, is where we work through our sun salutation. We come into our plank, and then with the tailbone tucking under, so see, I've got the core strong instead of tilting the tailbone up here. The tailbone tucking under, I brush the elbows along the side body as I lower forwards, I hover off the floor, and then I lift up into my upward dog. And then down dog, and then jump forwards. Anyway, forget those bits because we're just doing Chaturanga. Now, when we're doing our Chaturanga, we're thinking about the shoulders like they've got headlights on them. Okay, so if I show you from this angle, yeah, I think you can see that. I think about brushing the elbows to the side as I come forwards. Now, tempting is people will round, and you see, now if I had headlights on my shoulders, they'd be pointing down at the floor. Hopefully you get that analogy. So keeping the shoulder blades working back as I come forwards and down here, instead of, it's really hard to pretend to do it wrong, rounding through the spine here, if you see what's happening. So one way we can think about getting into that placement is taking some blocks underneath the shoulders. So that's going to help us from dipping into that front body or lifting our bum up. But you can, of course, do this with the knees dropping to the floor as well. So I've got so many ideas. I'm trying to distinguish between them. Right, let me show you this one first. So from our plank, we come forwards, the shoulders come onto the blocks. We can think about when we get there, tucking the tailbone under even more, lifting the shoulders up so our headlights point forwards, and then releasing. So I want everyone to practice that, but just to remind you, you can of course do that with the knees to the floor as well. So from your plank, we tuck the knees, and it's different to knees, chin, chest, so it's not this one. We keep the knees to the floor, but we tuck the pelvis under, and then we brush the elbows along the side body as we lower forwards and down. Okay, so first of all, don't worry about your blocks for a second. I just want you guys to come into your plank, and I want you to do a Chaturanga. So lowering forwards and down, and then just hover. So Emma, tuck your pelvis under. Good, good, good. Take a break. Okay, so I saw some of you come into your plank, lovely here, and then did this. I'm exaggerating because I want people at home to kind of get the idea a bit easier. But try to really think about squeezing this all the time, hips to the ribs, and hold it all the way forward. There'll be a point where you get to where you want to take some of the weight back up again instead of all the weight being down. So you will naturally want to kick your bum out to kind of take some of that weight back off of your upper body, but try really hard to resist that temptation. Also, I see people do this a lot. They come to their plank, and I say, Chaturanga, up dog, down dog. They bend the elbows a bit, and then they just go and kind of skip the Chaturanga altogether almost. Please don't skip the Chaturanga. I know it's hard, but it does get better the more that you practice it, I promise. So it's worth even doing it with the knees to the floor, even doing it if you can't bend the elbows all the way down. Just go to that point where it's really challenging for you, hold it, and then release into your upward facing dog. But don't give up. Okay, so we're going to do it again. I want us to do this Chaturanga now for a count of 5. So I want you to really feel into it, and I want you to really think about that feeling of ribs towards the hips and squeezing there. So find your plank. Lowering forwards and down for 5. 4, keep the pelvis tucking under. 3, lift the space between the shoulder blades. 2, and 1. Good, and release. Nice. Okay, let's talk about the arms, what the arms are doing in Chaturanga. So often people come to yoga and they've done press-ups before, and they think, oh yeah, the arms are the same as that. Now in a press-up, our arms are kind of coming out to the side a bit more. But in Chaturanga, we want the elbows brushing alongside the body here. So the elbows is actually kind of more of an internal rotation as they come down. The hands are about shoulder width apart to start off with, and then as we come forwards, obviously I'm moving my arms, but it would be my body moving, they brush along the side of the body. So I want you to really think about that motion. And this time in your Chaturanga, does everyone have a block? We're going to take the block between the thighs and squeeze it is going to help us to keep this engagement so that when we come into our plank and we squeeze, we can come forwards. Okay, so grab a block. If you don't have a block, use an imaginary one, or you can squeeze like a rolled up towel or something as well. I want you to start off in your plank with your hands shoulder width apart. Good, just adjust to find that nice long plank shape. Squeeze the glutes, tuck the pelvis under. Find that plank, find the plank. Come forwards, Philippine. Tuck your hips under. Good. Now lower Chaturanga. Elbows brush by your side. Elbows in, elbows in, elbows in. Good. Take a break. So, start again. Find your plank. Make sure that the hands are underneath the shoulders. I think maybe yours are a little bit further forward, Philippine. So get the hands underneath the shoulders. Squeeze your block. Tuck the pelvis under. Tuck your pelvis under. Your back is arcing quite a bit there, Philippine. Lift up that space. Yes, come forwards and down, forwards and down, forwards and down. And release. Okay, let's talk about our Chaturanga. How did you guys find that one? Is that Filipino? I didn't see which box that went around then. Yeah. It's such a challenging posture, and it's one that we do repeatedly again and again and again. I mean, I would say nearly 70% of the classes that I teach will have Chaturanga in it. And so making sure that you get that right is so key, because when you do something wrong over and over and over, you're potentially putting your body at risk of injury, which is why I think it's something that's worth putting in the time to get it right. And it's a process, okay, because the first time I did Chaturanga, it did not look like it looks like today, I promise you. And it takes a lot to build up that upper body strength, especially if you're not used to doing those kinds of things. So please, guys, never give yourself a hard time for thinking you're not doing it right, because just making sure that you can work into a way that is right for your body and that is progressing. And I've seen a lot of changes already from your first Chaturanga to the last one, and it's just a practice. So there's only one thing that I would say that I think is really key for yours specifically, is finding this plank shape to begin with. Because when I saw you, you kind of had the tailbone tilted here, and you were starting like this, and then you're kind of working, and it's actually really tricky to go from there. So once you get this, and you see that movement that I did to get there, but the drawing of the hips and the ribs together, the lifting up of this space between the shoulders, even if my knees are to the floor still, but you think about kind of doing a bit of a cat by lifting up this space and then folding forwards from here, I think that's really going to help to improve that practice for you personally. Oh, that hurt. How did everyone else find it? Did you find that the block felt different as well using that? Yeah, it's a motto for life, that one. I just realised, okay, so because I'm filming it on my phone as well, and I can hear you all through my headphones, but on my phone, people are just going to hear me, so they're not going to know what you just said, Natalie. So Natalie said, tuck the tailbone is a good thing that she's learned today that applies to a lot of the postures. Okay, so in our Chaturanga, I want us to do it another time, and I want you to really think about what the upper body is doing. So we've thought a lot about the lower body, about having that pelvis tucking under, about having the ribs to the hips so we keep this whole bit nice and strong. But we've not, I spoke a little bit about the shoulders, but we've not really added that as a focus. So I want you to really imagine that you have those headlights shining out through the front of your shoulders, and that you have the elbows brushing alongside as you bring the body forwards. And you can also use your blocks underneath your shoulders. So think about coming forwards. Try not to let the elbows come up and the shoulders come down. So really kind of thinking about this movement, and then just hover the shoulders above the blocks so that they're pointing forwards. Try to make this adjustment and then hold it there and then release. I think it's worth saying, because I think when a lot of people start Chaturanga, they think about taking the body down, whereas actually it's really a motion of taking the body forwards. So thinking about maybe like a press up, I'm taking the body down and up, whereas in a Chaturanga, I'm coming forwards and down. So you see that difference between going forwards as opposed to just going straight down. And I think that's also why people often kick the bum up, because your body is so long. God, I've really hurt my knee this morning. Because the body is so long, I think I'm getting old, that if we went straight down, You see, I haven't really got enough room to kind of do that, so I kick my bum up. But when I think about bringing the body forwards, then I have enough room. And then from there, I can roll over the toes, come on the top of my feet seamlessly into my upward facing dog. Okay, so let's do one more. Think about the shoulders. I say one more, guys. You know it's not one more. We're doing more than one. Finding your plank. Hands underneath the shoulders to begin with. So lower the hips down just a little bit, Philippine, but that shape is looking so much better. Good. Bring the shoulders forwards over the wrists. Yes. Tuck the tailbone even more. Engage that core. Yes, there we go. Now lower forwards and down. Oh, that's already so much better. Hold it, hold it, hold it. And release. Okay, let's do it again. Thinking about those shoulders, imagining those headlights on your shoulders pointing forwards. Find your plank. Really engage that core, tuck the tailbone under, nice and strong. Good, come forwards, 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 forwards. Bend the elbows. Philippine, you're not bending the elbows, bend your elbows. Coming forwards and release. Okay, if you've got blocks, get your blocks ready. Take them underneath where the shoulders are going to go, remembering that you will be moving forwards. And when you get your shoulders to your blocks, I want you to hold it and just think about only very lightly touching the blocks. And when you get there, I want you to take your attention to making sure you're not here and rotating so that the shoulders are pointing up. Think about opening through this front part of the chest and also thinking about retucking through the tailbone. Okay, so find your pose, coming forwards. Hovering, retucking the tailbone. Good, that looks so much better already, Rebecca. I'm seeing that upper body really working. And take a break. Okay. Now I want you to think about everything that you've learned about Chaturanga, and you're going to do 2 more. And I'm not going to tell you what to think about because I've already told you. You just need to remember this and process that information as you're moving through that pose. So you're going to do 2 more. Remember, it's totally fine to take the knees down to the floor. And Philippine, I think, put the knees down, keep working on that motion of the upper body. And once you feel more confident with that, then we're going to take the knees up. But I just want to remind you that the elbows brush along the side body, so we're here, we still want this kind of like engagement here, so no tucking the tailbone out, and we think about elbows forwards. It's tempting to kind of think about, well, I know where the body wants to go, so I'm just going to take the body down, but really let the elbows guide as and when you get there. Okay, so 2 more Chaturangas. Forwards and down. Remembering everything that you learned. Yes, bend your elbows, Philippine. Brush them along the side of the body. Tuck them in. Yes. Nice work, guys. Last one. Make it your best one. Come on, you guys are showing off now. Beautiful. Wow. Okay. Yay, well done everyone. I've just realised that went on a little bit longer than I thought it would, so I'm really sorry if you have other plans this morning you need to rush off. But I hope that you learned something this morning. I hope that you've learned things that you will take into your practice now after this. Because, you know, when we do these poses and we hold them for, like, say, 5 breaths, it's not just get there and hold it. We want to get there, think about all the things that we know that we should be doing in the pose, that we know the alignment cues because we've heard them before, and try to apply them so that that pose starts at, you know, maybe 60% and maybe we get to 100% by the end of those 5 breaths. So yeah, if you need to run off, but I'm going to hang around. So if you've got any questions or you want to share anything that you learned today, hello. And if there's something, sorry, Benny's just come in. And if there is something that you learned today that you are really happy with, or something like that, and you want to share it on social media, please tag me at Katasana, because I love seeing it, and it helps other people to find me too. So, has anyone got anything they want to share, or any final thoughts, or any postures for next month? So for the purpose of the recording, Emma said that she didn't realise that you're supposed to go forwards and down in the Chaturanga instead of straight down. So you've got that cue now, and now you know how to work into that. And actually, I did see your practice change a lot from when you were going down before and you were kicking your tailbone up to actually having that strength in the core to hold that shape all the time that you go forward. It's a much stronger pose. And yeah, like you say, it happens so frequently through our practice that spending the time to get it right, because the amount of time when I teach, and because it's so quick, especially in the things like the power yoga or the rocket yoga, and people often just skip out that pose altogether and just kind of use it to flop down in the middle. And I'm like, all right, everybody stop. Let's all do this together. Let's all do it properly. But yeah, it is one I really think it's worth taking the time. Even if like you're thinking, oh, my soup's in the microwave for 2 minutes, I'm just going to do a couple chaturangas now. Like, just find some time and just stick it in, work on it. Maybe it's just me that does stuff when things are in the microwave. I'm like, oh, I can do 2 handstands now. That's so nice as well that you like Malasana, and it's a pose that you like to get into to make yourself feel more relaxed and to just sink into when it was something that you found really uncomfortable before. So that's really lovely. So Tom's doing his Malasana now next to me. He doesn't look very comfortable. It's a practice. So the question that Natalie has just asked is, so I feel really like awkward saying this back to you, but it's just for the recording, has said that her partner also finds this a really difficult pose, and whether it's something to do with males versus females, or whether maybe it's more about the tightness in the hips or something like that. I'm going to show you one more variation, not because it applied to any of you guys, but it's something that I think is a really lovely way to also work into this pose, is using a chair, like having something to hold on to sink your hips down. Because usually when Tom does it, he looks like he's going to do a backward roll over the top. So by having something to, by having something to kind of hold on to and support your way down into it is actually a lot more comfortable. It might be that for Gary, actually, he's got the feet in the wrong place. And by moving them and taking it wider and closer, that might mean that he can find a position, God, really hurt that, find a position that really works a bit better for him, or it could be that opening up into the hips. But I wouldn't know without looking at him. For Tom, it's definitely a tightness in the hips issue, and if he worked on that flexibility, it'd probably be better. Tom does a lot of cycling, not a lot of stretching, do you?
I think centre of gravity.
Yeah. Centre of gravity as well, he said. So by holding on to something like a chair, I think that can really help. He said you're welcome. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to save this class and post it on my YouTube as a replay link. So if you feel like you want to do it again, if there's, you're like, oh, she said something about this pose, I can't remember what it was, but it's really useful, you can go through and watch it again and find that. And if you think anyone would find this useful as well, feel free to pass it on. And yeah, let's share the yoga love. But I hope you all have a great day, and I will see you guys soon. If there's a posture you want to cover another time, drop me a note, let me know. You don't have to wait for me to ask you. And you can always ask me questions anytime anyway. It doesn't have to be at Asana Clinic. But I will see you guys soon. And yeah, thank you so much. Bye.